My children went to All Children's Integrated Primary School, which is just across the way from here. I was a governor there for a few years, and my children were sort of getting towards halfway up the primary school, and I was really starting to get concerned about where they were going to go.
So when the need arose for a second level school in this area, not only for our own children's benefit, but we just felt we could pay a bit back by getting involved in that.
The thing that kind of motivated, I think, most of the group for setting up Shimna was we were at a stage in life with young families, and we just had the feeling that things had to change in the country overall and with the education system. So we saw integrated education as a way forward and went for that.
Anyone who sent their children to All Children's, you were an oddity. You were one of those weird ones, because we were breaking all the social norms, especially of a small town like this, where everybody's very regimented in their thinking and old-fashioned, and we were breaking ground and we were treated with distrust.
A group of the governors and founder parents in All Children's took on the job of getting in touch with NICE for a development officer and having a go at starting what became Shimna Integrated College.
Northern Ireland Council for Integrated Education sent us a development officer, Kevin Lamb.
My moving to be the first development officer of NICE coincided with an Education Act in 1989, which enabled parents to set up integrated schools. Initially we had to find a building big enough and suitable enough to, on a temporary basis, establish our school. Murlough House used to be owned by Queen's University. We rented the building initially. We looked at other sites which weren't suitable.
There were loads of challenges. Where to start? We had to convince people that we were actually going to do this, because people were looking at us and thinking, no, it's not happening. And I mean, we were sort of expecting parents to send their children to a school that didn't exist, didn't have a uniform, didn't have a record. We had to recruit teachers. So I had teachers who were handing in resignations and giving up their jobs, but we didn't know, we really didn't know until day one that we were going to be able to pay their salaries. Scary stuff.
The climate of the times was not for sharing or joining, or it was very very divisive. There were still people being killed. But even at a low level, people would stop us in the street, people we knew, and said, "Well, that'll never work. Well, you're mad." A combination of either we were just idiots and didn't understand the way things worked in Northern Ireland. There was a lot of that. You know, this it doesn't do that here.
It was so new to the area, and people were afraid in some instances. They were unsure. It was a huge step.
We used to go out into the community to raise awareness and get support from parents. So we would go to public libraries from everywhere from Newry to Banbridge to Newcastle here. And me and a colleague of one of the members of the team, we had the joy of Kilkeel Library on a I think it was November, but certainly a cold, wet winter's evening. And Mary and I sat for 2 hours on our own in Kilkeel Library. Not a single soul turned up.
We all had the same goal, and we all had our children's future in mind. So you keep going, and no matter what people throw at you, you'll keep going, because your kids are the most important thing. And I wanted them to have the best, and this is the best.
They were used to the integrated system. They were determined that their children weren't going to leave an integrated primary school and be thrown into the segregated education sector, which would have been shock. And I think that's what lent strength to it.
We developed what would be our lasting philosophy, which was integrated, academically excellent, all ability, child-centred, parent-friendly education for all. That was huge.
I got lots of people telling me I was mad, but I really do believe in all-ability education. That was part of the disappointment at the thought of coming back to Northern Ireland, that academic selection has got such a strong hold here. I've been lucky enough to be involved in writing the English curriculum for Northern Ireland, and I was really excited to be able to found this English department and prove to myself and the world that academic excellence is wholly possible, indeed is inevitable in an all-ability classroom.
I think, in all honesty, I didn't understand completely all the nuances of integrated schools, but I knew that I wanted to teach all abilities, and I knew that I wanted to teach everyone.
We were struggling to get the 60, and numbers went up and numbers went down because people would bottle out and say, oh, I don't know if I can, no, we're just going to go with, and then the next week they would say, no, we're coming. And it was up and down, and at that point it was one of the department officials said to me, he says, Mrs. Morgan, he said, you have the sea on the one side, you have the mountains on the other, you actually just don't have the catchment for this. And that was just, give us the focus, right, we just need to go with this.
We had to have a minimum of 60 students to have any department funding. With all the meetings and the efforts that we made, we only had 60 potential students signed on. We were expecting 60 to turn up the first day.
I remember on the very first day, the 1st of September 1994, standing outside with the founding governors and parents of Shimna, waiting to see if the necessary 60 students would actually arrive, because while we had 60 students signed up by their families, doesn't mean they're going to turn up on the first day, because it's difficult. It's a leap of faith to send your child to a school that doesn't actually exist at that point. So there was the possibility that 1, 2 or more parents would have said, no, this is too risky. So actually when the buses arrived, and we had to hire our own buses because all the buses in Newcastle actually left Newcastle for post-primary education, so we had a fight in our hands to eventually get the Education Authority to send their buses to us, so we hired private buses. And as the children got off the bus, we were all in our heads counting the students.
59 turned up. This was going to be a disaster, absolute disaster.
If we didn't get 60, we had no money, and those teachers were all standing there, and I had no salaries for them.
There was a phone call from the office in the school to parents who said, no, she's sick, she'll be there tomorrow. And there was a huge cheer. And the department continued to phone during the week to make sure we really did have 60, or we were in major trouble.
Nobody would sell land for integrated education because they were ostracizing themselves from their own communities. But this belonged to the Ansleys, and so they didn't have that restriction. So we put an offer in for this place, and we were pretty confident we were going to get it. But 2 or 3 of us said, well, we need to show parents where we're going to be. So we commissioned, about below us in our workshop in Newcastle was a sign writer. So we commissioned the largest sign he could make for us, and it said, site for Shimna Integrated College, and we stuck it up at the gate. Now, at that point, it wasn't confirmed that it was a site for Shimna Integrated College, but we thought, it's going to happen. We believed it was going to happen, and it did. So I don't think we bent it a little bit. But it just meant we could bring people and say, look, this is where we're going to be. Look at it, isn't it amazing? So it was just, occasionally you had to go quite close to the edge, let's put it that way.
Our school motto, which we worked on and became learning from each other. That happens when you break down the barriers, when you're open about your background, when you're open about your culture, when you're open about your beliefs, your family, your history. So learning from each other and means students learning from staff, staff learning from students, everyone being open to each other.
Integrated education, to me, is the only way it can be. Because to segregate from at any age, but from an early age, it leads to division. It perpetrates it and creates it. And the only way out of that, the only honourable, noble, human way out of that is to bring us all together. And that's what we've always believed, and what all of us believe. And to think of all the generations now of students that have been here, who've been immersed in that ethos, I mean, that's changed. It's changed this part of the world. It's changed, the integrated education movement has changed Northern Ireland, and is continuing to do so.
When I was coming in here this morning and just sort of parked over in Donald Park and walked in and come right around the old building, And I did sort of stop for a wee moment coming around the corner and look at the new construction and thinking, you know, aye, thumbs up, not, you know, proud to have been sort of in there at the start, you know. Yeah, it was a nice moment.
I think the big one for me was coming back for the sod cutting for the new premises. And I just felt so welcomed, so welcome. I felt like I'd come home.
Someone had asked, have you any funny stories? I'm no good at funny stories, but I've got such happy memories. It was just such a wonderful experience being in this place.
I think it's as necessary as ever. Sometimes you can feel comfortable in a place like Newcastle because it's not as strictly divided as most towns still are in Northern Ireland. But peace is fragile. We can't take it for granted. We don't have a government. Brexit caused problems. A border vote will cause problems. We can't assume that peace is fixed, and peace is much more easily broken up than rebuilt. And so it's as important as ever that children are meeting others, are mixing, having friendships of all sorts, and integrated education is just as important as ever.
Never take it for granted. Never take it for granted, because there was a lot of hard work to get us here.